For this, or is this looking beneath your?
I hear lots of dogs and activity going on. I see we have about 16 people with us right now, I think.
Should be signing in.
You think he'll put that dog up?
Hi.
Hello.
Because that's all you hear is him barking.
Okay, everyone, it's 6:30, so I think that we're going to get started. So we have 16 people. Alfred, I think, can everybody mute their, hi, Bob, how you doing? Bob and Janine? Could everybody mute their mics?
How do you do that?
Well, there's a little, if you go down to the bottom left corner, there's a little button that says mute. Do you see that?
Oh, I do now. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, great. All right, so I think that everybody, looks like everybody here is already familiar with FAN. I had a little spiel with respect to share with you what we do, but I think just in case I may still, I see a few, like someone named iPhone, so maybe this person is not aware. So I'll give a little bit of introductory comments regarding that. Anyways, welcome to all of you to our June Public Forum. We are excited to welcome today our Northwest Wayne FAN board member, Andy Hobson, and Dr. Shady Shebeck as our speakers tonight. So before we begin with the speaker portion of the program, I have a few introductory remarks, a little information to share with you. Again, I think that most of the people on this Zoom call are familiar with us. Just in case there are anyone who's not, I just want to share that Families Against Narcotics has been around since, well, over a decade. There are over 20 chapters in Michigan. Our mission is to provide education, resources, and support to families and individuals who've been impacted by addiction. So all of the chapters do that in a variety of ways, but one way we all share is with monthly public forums, and that's what you're attending tonight. So our monthly public forum happens on the first Monday of the month. So this is our June Public Forum. We also have 2 support groups that we offer. We have a grief support group for people who've lost a loved one as a result of addiction. That group meets twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Monday of every month. We also have a family and friends peer support group that also meets twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month. So normally, all of these meetings meet live in Canton. But right now, because of what we've all been experiencing with the coronavirus pandemic, all of the meetings are on Zoom. And they all have the same meeting password and the same meeting ID. So if you're interested in attending any of those, you'll know it's the same one. For more specifics about the time of these meetings, you can get information in 2 places. We have a very active Facebook page. All of these meetings are events that are on our Facebook page, so you can find them there with more detailed information. You can also find the information on the Families Against Narcotics website. So if you go there, you hit the location button, drop down to Northwest Wayne, and you'll be able to see the information regarding our public forums and our meetings. Just a couple of other things I want to share with you, both of which we're kind of excited about before we jump into the speaker portion of our meeting. In April, we launched a recovery home scholarship program. So we're partnering with 5 recovery home organizations in our service area. And we've been able to provide over $9,000 worth of scholarships to individuals in early recovery who've either lost their job or lost work hours as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and have been unable to pay the recovery home fees. We've also provided them with other types of support that they need in order to continue their recovery. So we're really proud and excited that we've been able to do that. We would not have been able to do that without 3 really amazing donors, all of which just in the past few months gave us a significant amount of money. So I want to recognize those 3 and thank them. One of them is Orexo, which is the maker of Zubsolv, a medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorder. Another one is the Rotary District 6400 Area 3 clubs, 2 of which are in Westland and Wayne. So they donated $2,500 to our program. So we're very grateful for that. And then the CDS Foundation also made a very significant donation to our program that, again, altogether has allowed us to award these scholarships, and we are going to be able to do that going forward as well. So we're super excited about that. The other thing I wanted to mention is for those of you who are familiar with Families Against Narcotics, you are no doubt aware of the annual fundraiser that happens every summer called Run Drugs Out of Town. So this is a big, huge event that happens in Macomb. And I think there are 2,500 people that went last time, and it's super fun and amazing and great. And they're not doing it this year because of the coronavirus epidemic. So instead, rather than risk, spread of the virus through lots and lots of people in one place, we're doing a virtual run. So a virtual Run Drugs Out of Town, and it's going to happen on August 29th, which is a Saturday. So for more information about that, you can go on to the website, the Families Against Narcotics website. If you hit event, you'll see a drop down, and you can hit 2020 Run Drugs Out of Town. It'll give you some detail about that. So we have, in the past, created a Northwest Wayne fan team, and we've done that again this year. This year, we named our team Team Dakota, Northwest Wayne. And we did that in memory of Andy Hobson's son, Dakota, who passed away from an overdose a few years ago. So if any of you are interested in joining us with this, you can, again, register through the website. When you follow through the registration process, you have to identify the team. And so we ask you to identify Team Dakota, Northwest Wayne, because then the registration fees or any other donation that you want to make will flow through to our chapter. Does anyone have any questions? All right, we're going to begin with our speakers then. So everyone's muted right now because obviously with lots of people talking, it'd be a little hard to hear the speaker. So we're going to have, as I said, two speakers. So Andy is going to begin. And as I mentioned, he's a member of Northwest Wayne Fans Board of Directors. He's got extensive personal experience with addiction, both in himself and in his children. So he's going to share a little of his own experience with you regarding how the coronavirus pandemic and all the chaos we're experiencing socially right now has affected him in his recovery. We are going to follow that then with a presentation by Dr. Shady Shebeck. He is a board certified physician specializing in general and adolescent psychiatry, as well as addiction. Okay, someone needs to mute their mic. Okay.
I think you're muted. Lauren, you're muted.
Fix that. Okay, can you hear me now? All right. So on to my sort of giving a little brief bio for Dr. Shebeck. So as I said, he's board certified in general and adolescent psychiatry as well as addiction medicine. He received a degree in psychology with a minor in biology from the University of Michigan Dearborn, then received his Doctor of Medicine degree in 2013 from the American University of the Caribbean. He trained in general psychiatry at Virginia Tech, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Virginia Tech Carolion, I think, School of Medicine, and Michigan State University. Dr. Shebeck has presented at regional and national academic conferences. He's published several peer-reviewed papers. He has a faculty appointment with Michigan State University College of Human Medicine, and he serves as core faculty for the Garden City Hospital Neurology Department. He's recently opened Core Psych PLLC, a private practice psychiatric clinic in Dearborn, Michigan. He's going to be speaking about how best to cope with the heightened anxiety that I think all of us are feeling as a result of our current economic, health, and social crises that, again, are sort of affecting all of us. So there'll be a Q&A after each of our speakers have finished speaking. And so if you have any questions or comments for the speakers, you should type them into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring that, so I'll make sure that any of your comments and questions are conveyed to the speakers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy. I think I'm turning it over to Andy. I think Andy might be muted. Andy? Andy, you're muted. Okay, now you're
Can you hear
good.
me? Okay. Hello, my name is Andy, as Lauren said. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to talk about what I've been doing. And, you know, during this crazy time, this lockdown, you know, this is all new to all of us. And anyways, you know, I'm an addict in long-term recovery. I'm also a father of children who's been affected by addiction. And I got involved with FAN a little over 4 years ago when I lost my son, Dakota, May 5th, 2016. And, you know, I mean, FAN has been phenomenal for me. You know, it's helped me through a lot of trying times, and, you know, a lot of hard times. So I'm very fortunate that I got involved and I got asked to be a part of this. And, you know, it's gotten me through a lot of tough times. You know, during all this, you know, I really didn't know where I was going to turn. I didn't know where I was going to turn to during, you know, the time of the loss of my son, and I turned to FAN. So, you know, and that's how I got involved. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what's been going on during this pandemic and what I've been doing and what I've been trying to do to I guess stay, you know, somewhat sane. You know, I got laid off. March 30th was my last day of work. And when I got the news that I was going to get laid off, because I thought I wasn't, because I work at the steel mill and, you know, we were essential, but the steel mill decided they were going to shut down. Honestly, I was really excited. I've been working for the last 10 years. I've been working 70 hours a week. So I was like, all right, man, I get a break. You know, I assumed just a couple week break, because that was what the talk was. I was gonna be off till like May 15th. Well, I'm still off today, and I found out I probably won't go back until July. So the first week of this whole, you know, shutdown, you know, everything was good. It was nice to be with the family. My son was home. We quarantined together, and, you know, everything seemed, you know, just great. You know, I got to spend time with the wife. She was off work, you know. And we, you know, we were just having some good family times. We were sitting down having dinner together every day. You know, these are things we haven't done, you know, with my schedule and her schedule. And my youngest son's 18, he works. So you know, I really truly thought it was going to be a breeze. And the second weekend of the lockdown, my nephew, who was my son's best friend, he overdosed and died. And everything changed for me at that point, you know. I basically was the one that had to be there for my sister. I had to, you know, help her plan and do all the funeral stuff. And so it started having me relive 4 years ago when I found my son. And being locked down and not being able to turn to my AA meetings and my 12-step groups, I was having a real struggle. And I felt lost. I didn't know what to do. You know, I didn't know who to turn to, and not being able to, you know, have our normal forums for FAN. I mean, you know, everything was abnormal to me. And it started affecting me emotionally. It just started tearing, you know, it had me up in my mind. You know, I'm used to working 12 hours a day. That's a 12-hour block of my day where I'm not up here in my own head. Well,
Looking like we lost him. Are people hearing him or no?
He must have frozen.
So, wow, where are you, Barb?
am I back?
Yes.
You're back.
Okay, sorry. I just,
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
You're back.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe I'm having a bad connection. Anyways, so May 5th was a tough day all around. You know, it was my sister's son's birthday, and it was the day I lost my son. So we all went to the cemetery and we did our thing. I do it every year. And when I got home that day, I I sat in my chair and I said, man, I got to do some changing. You know, I'm going crazy. I'm driving myself crazy. I'm slipping into depression. I'm not in a good space. So, you know, I started working out more. I started getting healthy, and that's something new to me. I never really worked out because I work hard at my job, you know, and I always tell my wife, I get my physical fit from work, you know, I'm not going to do none of that working out. I'm not going to do none of them walks and all that. And I did start walking before May 5th. So I had that going for me, and that helped me a lot, because as I continued to take my 2 walks a day and get, you know, healthy, I was feeling good about myself. So that was keeping me from slipping into basically full-fledged depression. And then I started turning to Zoom meetings. You know, I started making Zoom meetings myself. I started calling my AA friends, and I said, hey, I need meetings. I need you people. I need the support, you know, regardless if it's, you know, in person or online. I'm going through a tough time, and this whole lockdown is affecting me really emotionally. And of course, they all came to my aid, you know, and we started doing a lot of Zoom meetings, about 8 of us. And then we slowly but surely, you know, the last couple weeks, we've been doing some bonfire meetings where we can see each other in person, but we keep our 6 foot, you know, distance. And that meant a lot to me, because for all the people that know me, I'm a people person. I like to be around people. I like to help people. I like to work with people. And of course, all that got ripped from me, you know, when COVID-19 set in. And I mean, obviously, I'm not the only one. I mean, the people in early recovery, I can't imagine. You know, I can't imagine what they're going through, or what you're going through if you are in early recovery, because, you know, they teach us in AA and NA and any 12-step that you don't want to isolate. And we basically got forced to isolate, you know, because of this COVID-19. And I'm continuing, you know, I'm continuing to work out 5 days a week. I'm continuing to stay in contact with my people from my 12-step program, and it's helped me a lot. You know, talking to my wife about it. You know, I'm the type of guy who will isolate, and once I get in that funk, I don't want to burden them with my problems, and I'll just stuff them down until I basically have, you know, somewhat not a complete meltdown, but I mean, I'm just not myself. And thank God my wife's aware of that. You know, she brought it to my attention that, you know, I wasn't acting normal. I wasn't my happy-go-lucky self. I'm a happy person by, you know, all the time. You know, I'm usually not a downer. So I've never really dealt with depression of any extent. And this is probably about the worst it's ever gotten, was during this lockdown. And you know, if it wasn't for me finding the healthy stuff in life, eating right, I changed my eating habits. You know, working out and walking and just being conscious of what I'm doing to myself, I don't know where I would have ended up. And so the health part played a big part for me, you know, just being conscious of what I'm doing with myself, and you know, and trying to stay busy. I mean, you go from 12 hours a day of working to sitting at home. I mean, you can only do so much to a house. You can only do so much in the yard. And, you know, I was basically running out of options. And thank God that I had some time in recovery and had a good network to turn to, because I'm going to tell you, they came to my aid. You know, they were checking up on me, and they were making me feel good. And they, you know, they talked me down, and they talked me through my hard times. It's still a work in progress. I wish I had the answers. You know, I wish I knew how to stay, you know, to stay from slipping into, you know, isolate depression. But if I work at it every day and I continue doing what I'm doing, you know, I am improving. And, you know, I did get, you know, for me, and I'm not sure if I should even, you know, touch on this, but I'm going to. I got spiritually connected again. I got in touch with my higher power, and I asked him, you know, to help me get through these tough times, these trying times, you know, and you know, knowing that I had something bigger than me, you know, It doesn't necessarily have to be God. It just has to be something bigger than you. For me, it is God. Knowing that I had something that was guiding me and going to take care of me helped me out a lot too. But I believe the biggest thing through this whole lockdown for any of us with mental or addiction, you know, I believe that they both go hand in hand. And I think anyone with addiction does have some sort of, you know, mental stability, you know, something, you know, for me, I was covering up what I truly felt. That's what I did. I numbed it with alcohol and drugs. So, you know, there is a mental side to my addiction. And I believe the biggest thing was communicating and talking about it. Do was sleep, lay in bed, try to sleep away this lockdown. And, you know, for me, it's not going anywhere. You know, I'm going to be off work another month. And, you know, yes, things are opening up. Yes, meetings are opening up. You know, you can have meetings up to 10 people. So all that is definitely a bonus for me. Getting close with my family was huge. You know, me and my son, we rebuilt a relationship that kind of, I mean, we've not, my youngest son, Drew, we never were at bad times, but I mean, he was 18 years old. So for the last year, he's kind of been doing his own thing. And, you know, as a father, I just been kind of sitting on the outside, you know, trying to get him to come home, trying to get him to, you know, spend time with me. But I mean, he was 18. I was 18 once too. And I had to remember that. And, you know, when I asked him if he would come and do quarantine with me, because he was kind of living at his girlfriend's at the time, he agreed to do it. And man, doing that family stuff really saved me too. I mean, sitting down and having dinner with my son 7 days a week, I probably never done that his whole life. You know, I've always been at work. And sitting down and going on walks with him and working out and, you know, spending time with my mom. She came back from Florida and I'm staying at my mom's house. I'm in the process of buying a house and I can't until I go back to work. So when she came home from Florida, you know, spending that time with her too, you know, this is all huge stuff to keep you from slipping into that deep depression. You know, family is, you know, you have your family. I mean, you can't get no better than that. So there was a lot of positives to this lockdown for me. It brought me and my son back to how we used to be when he was 14 and 15. And he made the comment to me that, you know, Dad, I'm going to start being home more. I missed having this time with you. And me and him working out together, I mean, I never dreamt that I'd work out 5 days a week with my son. I never dreamt that I would go on family walks with my son, his girlfriend, my wife. And these are the things we did. And it saved me. It truly did. So that's what's helped me get through. You know, this is all new territory to me. I haven't slowed down in 10 years. You know, I never really had the time to take a look at Andy and see where I needed improvement. And I actually had the time, and my diet was one of the big ones. You know, so getting healthy and you know, I never took the time to talk to my son every day in a long time. And doing all that kind of stuff, you know, that kept me from just, you know, just basically sliding off the face of the earth. I mean, if I would have had my way at one point, I would have just went to bed and tried to stay in bed, you know, and I didn't. And I'm so happy that, you know, I'm still getting through it. I mean, it's still going on. And again, you know, I have reached out to a lot of people I know that were new in the program, because I wanted to give back what was being given to me by all my people and to see how they're doing. And then, you know, relapse and suicide's up like 600%. I read an article about it a couple days ago, and it's sad. But I mean, we can get through this together. You know, I mean, I know not being together, but you know, with Zoom and the technology, it's not as bad. It's not as hard as it used to be. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't have none of this. So I want to thank everyone for being on here today. I want to thank Lauren and Dara and everyone asking me to share my story. I'm just so thankful to see that we're still able to have meetings, you know, our monthly forum, and I can't wait to get back to normal. And you know, I hope someone, you know, took something from what I said and they can try it out and you know, and I hope I help someone. But thanks again for letting me share my story. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Andy. I don't know if you're seeing the comments in the chat. If they're to everyone. I'm a law school professor and I'm teaching online right now. And let me just tell you, talking and trying to read chats at the same time doesn't work all that well, I'm finding out. So I'm thinking that maybe Andy did not read the chat.
I didn't see none of them.
Yeah, well, how about if I will share them with you, because there's just a few of them before Dr. Shebeck begins his presentation. So the first one is from someone you know well, Jackie McGowan. Andy, you are an inspiration. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing how you push through your depression. Then we have Bob and Janine Davis. Good for you, Andy. Stay connected to your community. Then we have James Gunn. I've been so thankful to have my daughter with me during this quarantine time. It would have been a lot different for me if I did not, so I can really understand the importance of family. And then a question asked, what is your drug of choice?
Oh, crack cocaine was my drug of choice.
Yeah, past tense, was. Right, yeah. Anyways.
Was, yeah.
Yeah. And then you're never alone, Andy. Zoom has saved us also. Yeah, I completely understand that. And I applaud you. I pray you stay strong and healthy. Thank you for sharing your story. Huge hugs to you from Jackie, and love you and your family so much. So those are all the comments. And
all right, well,
thank you guys all for the support that you're showing to Andy, and that really we all show to each other in this group. And I'd like to now introduce Dr. Shebeck to give us some professional words of wisdom about how to deal with all the challenges of the pandemic, the stay-at-home orders, etc. Go ahead, Dr. Shebeck.
Thank you guys for having me. Very nice to share your story, Andy. Much appreciated. You know, so I want to start out a little bit on broad and just talk about addiction a little bit, and then kind of go into the social stuff that's been going on. Because it's been hard on all of us, obviously. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that were that put these policies in place and things like that, which, I mean, I'm not saying they're right or wrong, I'm just saying they didn't really think about the little things, the little people, the people that might be really struggling. We didn't see any guidance on how to help one another with the distancing. The other thing is that they use the term social distancing and social isolation, which I said that should have never been used. We should have been talking about physical distancing, because words do matter, right? Our minds are set up to think of words and process them, and then those words stick, and they have an effect on our emotions and the way we deal with ourselves and others. So, you know, I've always been calling it physical distancing, because I think physical distancing is much more correct, and it's much more neutral and less emotionally charged than saying social distancing and social isolation. So addiction is interesting. So when we start doing something that we enjoy, well, and especially when it's something that's artificial, right? So substances of abuse really increase certain chemicals in our brain far more than day-to-day activities. So if you eat an apple, it's going to increase your dopamine a little bit. So it's going to give you a little bit of joy, right? If you eat cheese, it'll give you a little bit of joy, chocolate, etc. If you do something like crack or heroin or cocaine or meth, that amount of joy that it's giving you is so artificial and so high in the beginning. So in the beginning, when someone struggles with addiction, I always say it's like two phases. The first phase is you do it and you cannot wait to do it again. So you're excited. It's bringing you a lot of excitement, and you know, you're on top of the world and you can't wait to do it again. You do it again. That's called impulsive. So addiction starts as an impulsive reaction. It starts in the pleasure part of the brain. You're getting a lot of pleasure from these things of abuse. Somewhere along the line, something fun happens, fun for like from a scientific perspective, not on a personal perspective, but something interesting happens. Maybe that's the better word. Is that impulse turns into an obsession and a compulsion. So now it moves from the pleasure part of the brain to the part of the brain that, so it moves from the part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, which is the pleasure part, to a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that controls fear and anxiety. So now that's where the addiction really takes off. So now you're using something, not because you're getting any more excitement from it, but because you can't get it out of your head, you're so obsessed with it because of the anxiety. So now instead of the excitement building up and then being released through the impulsive act, right? Now it's the anxiety building up. So now it's no longer pleasure. So now you're trying to get rid of that anxiety and push it down. So there's a shift between impulsive to compulsive. What that means, in general, is that it goes from something that we call positive reinforcement, where you're taking something to get a positive effect from it, to negative reinforcement. You're taking something to take away a negative feeling. And that's where it becomes very tricky to deal with. And that's where most people start to either know that they have a problem, they start entering recovery. And if we could catch it before it gets to that point, it's a lot easier and better to manage and deal with. So that just goes out to, you guys have done a wonderful job in your recovery, but for people that you may know that are maybe using casually, the best place to stop is to prevent that from turning into the obsessive type of compulsive reaction that occurs, the anxiety, the negative reinforcement, because that's where it becomes very difficult to treat. And that's where we use things like, medication assisted treatments, like, we've heard of Suboxone and Zubsolv and the different shots that exist out there that people get. We're using those to ward off the negative effects of not using. So that's when those things become useful. So that's where, so if we could get to somebody before they get to that point, it would be, it's a lot easier to deal with, because that would just require some therapy, some maybe antidepressants or something like that to help the person stop, instead of once it gets to the point where it becomes an obsessive compulsive type thing where they're constantly thinking and worried and they have this bodily reaction to it. So I just wanted to give that quick summary of that, of the process of addiction, just to give people a better understanding of what they felt. I'm sure a lot of you guys have felt these things and didn't have words to kind of put to it. So I wanted to give you guys the language to kind of get in your head that's exactly normal. That's what happens. That's how addiction happens. Not just physical, not just chemical addictions, by the way. This includes behavioral addictions, pornography addictions, and other kinds of addictions, where it starts off as an exciting thing and then it turns into an anxious mess. And that's a lot of times where the secondary mental illnesses also come in at that point, because it's done damage to the mind. The good thing is people do recover. You guys are a perfect testament to that. And the recovery is the long road. It's not easy. Some people relapse, some people don't. Most people will probably relapse a few times. But that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to just keep you on the, as long as you're on that road to recovery, that's what's important. So let's shift a little bit. So human beings, what makes up a human being? I'll give you guys a few moments to either type up, or if someone wants to turn on their mic and interject, that's fine with me too. What is a human being? Rick, what do you think? Oh, he's gone.
I'm not sure if people are able to turn off to unmute, because we have the our tech guy sort of got everybody muted.
That's fine. So just think about it. So I think the human being is, sorry?
I turned off my mute. I'm Jamie.
Yep. Hi, Jamie.
I think a human is a creature of God, maybe.
Okay, that's an excellent answer, because we're going to get to that. So that's you're ahead of the curve on that. Yep.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm Lisa, and
Hi.
Mine is kind of similar. A human being is the guide. That's my answer.
Okay, sorry, what was that?
A human being is the vessel in which the mind and the soul reside. It's several things. It's a system. It's a machine that works together. So different parts, different things all working together in this one package as a machine. I think of it that way anyway.
Beautiful. I want to give you the terminology to say what you said. So
Thank
a human
you.
being is biological. It's a biological substance, right? It's chemicals and chemical reactions and nervous system and brain. and all that stuff, right? So how we deal with our physical health, our physical environment, that's part of being a human being. That's the physical. So physical or biological. We're influenced by our oxygen, our homes, what things look like, what things feel like. It's the 3D aspect, right? So we're a 3D thing. A human being is psychological. It's the relationship between the self, you and the self. So that's part of the human being, is the psyche, the psychology of the human being. All your defense mechanisms, all the ways you view the schemas of the world, all the biases that we may have, all of the interactions that we've had that have imprinted on us, that's the psychology part of a human being. So how we deal with ourselves. We're social. So now when the psychology of the human being, when our psychology starts to deal with other human beings occupying that space, that's social, right? So we're social beings. That's a sociology. How we deal with the community, how we deal with family, how we deal with friends. That's influenced by psychology, which is influenced by biology. So you're starting to see that system. It's a system. So the biology, you're born with certain genes, you're born with certain predispositions. Your psychology is how you learned and grew up and viewed the world through the constraints of the biology already on you. Then social is how you deal with the world based on how the world deals with you. And that often comes back to how you view yourself, because we often project things onto people and onto the world. So if we're always negative about ourselves, it's likely other people are going to see us negative because we're projecting that. If we're chaotic, our life is going to be chaotic. Even our three-dimensional home will be chaotic, right? So that's the system. And then there's another dimension that people shy away from, and that's the spiritual part. How we deal with the beyond, right? So
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And Lauren, if this is not the way that the forum is supposed to be, please let me know, and I won't ask questions. I don't know how to address you. Are you a doctor or what?
I'm a physician. I'm a psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. Okay. So what I was going to ask you is, where do you think the consciousness resides? Because the spiritual part is, I'll be quiet in a minute and listen to what you're about to say, but this spirituality, what remains when, I believe what remains when our human suit ceases to exist, where does that, and that part, to me, that part lives on, but where does it exist in the body? Or
I think that's a conversation for like a whole other session where we could have religious clerics and scholars here. We could touch on it a little bit, but what I want to talk about the spirituality part is where the biology is how we deal with the physical, psychology is how we deal with ourselves, the social is how we deal with others in our community, in our lives, the spiritual is how we deal with that which is beyond us, right? So for some people, that is God, that is the creator, that is nature, that is outer space, that is the heavens, so it's this thing that's beyond yourself. That's the spiritual from a clinical perspective. And everybody has these four things. Now, not everybody believes in God, but everybody has a certain awe of something outside of themselves, right? So these four things are what make up the human system: biology, psychology, sociology, or the social, and the spiritual. So when we look at the current events that are happening, whether it's the quarantine or the new stuff that's happening and feeling like we're being locked down and all that, what is that kind of taken away? So that's taken away our social habits, right? And it's taken away, for some people, their spiritual habits, not necessarily your spirituality, but your spiritual habits. And then those two, they haven't taken away your psychology because that's in you, that's in subjective space, but but taking away these two things has affected your psychology, right? So it's affected people getting depression, getting anxious, getting feeling helpless, or feeling or even, and it's affected our biology in a way where it taking away the social and the spiritual has made people not go to the hospitals as much if they need to, because they're quarantined and they're terrified to go to the hospital. So it's taken away even a toll on that, where people are not getting maybe proper medications. They're going into end-stage disease. Their psychosis or their schizophrenia, if they have mental health issues, is going out of whack. And people with addiction who may need rehab are being affected heavily by this. Thankfully, a lot of physician outpatient offices have switched over to tele, but because it was done haphazardly, a lot of places didn't have the video services yet in place. So they were doing telephone calls, or they were doing, quick check-ins or emails and stuff like that. So even with private practices and physicians turning over to teletherapy, we weren't there yet. We were almost like thrust right into it, and we had to adjust right away. Thankfully, with our clinic, we always had 1 day a week where we did the video conferences with patients that lived in the up UP and stuff. So we had the mechanisms in place, but many places didn't. And even us, we didn't have it in place for 5 days a week. And not being able to see someone face to face, even, video is much better than a quick phone call, I would assume, because you could at least see someone face to face, see their emotions, know that your provider or your physician or your nurse practitioner or whoever it is that's taking care of you, or your therapist or your support system or your peer recovery coach, that they're feeling what you're saying, because the face tells a lot, the eyes tell a lot, the body language tells a lot. So things got a little sloppy in the beginning. It's starting to get a little better now, but that sloppiness, who does it affect? It affects the people who are most vulnerable. It affects the people that need a routine, that need to go visit their doctor, that may have stage 2 cancer, right? And now there's sloppiness, and now they got stage 4. And it's so dark to talk about it, but we do have to discuss it and understand, because if this ever happens again, we need to be better prepared. What it's done to healthcare is it's definitely shifted the discussion towards more technology and more telehealth and more video conferencing, which I think is good, as long as it doesn't completely replace the clinic aspect for those who can come to clinic. But it is a good thing that a lot of people are switching over to videos and because it's actually broadened our scope and who we can help and cannot help. Like I said, we can see people all through Michigan now. Many providers can. So the social isolation has hurt people in that sense. The coronavirus has hurt people. People have died from it. I go to the hospital. I've seen the boards, the ER boards, and in the first few weeks, everyone was shortness of breath. But if you go now and look at the boards in the ER, it's suicidal, overdose, suicidal. That's not fake. That's true. What Andy was saying is absolutely true. I don't know about the exact percentage, but I'll tell you from a clinical experience, that is true. There is a high level of depression and untreated people and people who are anxious. And a lot of people are having shortness of breath. That's not due to COVID, it's due to panic, right? Every time you turn on the news, it's something terrible. So these things have all affected our psyche. We needed to handle this with a little bit more, I think, balance and reason, at least with the messaging. Physical distancing instead of social distancing, some accurate facts about the virus so people are not freaking out and thinking this is the end and they're going to die, no matter what. And what happens is we got conditioned, and even once that happens, it's really hard to uncondition people so that they can return back to life and see family and friends and things like that. So the reaction, the public reaction, the media attention and things like that really amplified something that should have been very important, but it amplified it to the point where it caused a little bit of hysteria in the most vulnerable people. You can do that. You can be hysterical and do that all you want if you have a country that has absolutely no one who has things going on in their life that makes it difficult. But there's no such thing as a country like that. And so the most vulnerable are the ones that get hurt the most with these things because it terrifies them. So I think there was a lot of that affected people's mental health. Access to physicians and things like that had a lot of effect. I think we're on a good turn now in healthcare with, like I said, as healthcare providers are using more of the technology now. I think in the future we're better prepared for something like this to immediately switch over when needed, and also to keep some of these services going, not to completely go back to the old model, but to kind of have a hybrid model of how we provide care to people. And some things are out of our control. That's where I think spirituality becomes very important. Finding the spirituality within your space, within your subjective space is a good thing. Finding ways to socially communicate and not socially distance, to physically distance, but not socially distance is our good strategy. Like Andy said, he has the bonfires where they stay safely apart from each other, Zooming with one another. These are very important because we also have to remember there's elderly folks who are living alone, who don't have Zoom, who don't know how to use this thing, and they're really socially isolated. So also to keep cognizant of the people that that may be in that situation, to drop in, give them a phone call every once in a while, check in on them, respect the social distancing, but make sure that they know that somebody cares about them, because those are also a very vulnerable population. Very vulnerable population are actually two: the young adults who generally live alone in apartments or what have you, or in college dorms, etc., and the elderly who often live alone. And both of these people need some social interaction to be healthy. So these are these are things that I think we have to keep in mind. We have to think about these things, and in setting, in setting policy, the voices of everybody need to be heard as to what our concerns are, so that we can have proper guidelines on how to deal with those concerns. It's always good for everybody to be civically engaged, to make sure that these things are being discussed, so that we're not thrown into something like this without being ready. And I think as far as coping at home and coping with things, there's taking walks, meditation. You've heard all these things. I don't want to be redundant on these things, but especially being up to date with your medications. If you're a former addict, to make sure that you have enough medication-assisted treatment available, that you're not going to run out and be stranded. If you're struggling with mental health problems or mental health issues, to make sure that you have a line of communication with your physician or with your therapist, so that you don't fall through the cracks, because this is the time where people start falling through the cracks, especially as physicians are switching over and trying all these new things. It's very easy to get lost within the cracks. So to make sure that you have a line of communication with who your provider is, so that you aren't one of the people that ends up falling through the cracks. With that said, I think, exercise caution, be careful, be as safe as you can be. And remember, we're biopsychosocial, spiritual animals, spiritual beings, right? And we need all four of these things to be able to function healthy in society. And we have all four things, but some are more dormant than others. So to make sure that they're in balance and they're in harmony, that this machine is in harmony with itself. And I would conclude at that, and keep some time open for any questions or comments. I think I went into 25 minutes or 20 minutes or something. So I'll end there. And if there's any questions or comments or concerns or discussion items, let us know.
Yeah. Doctors, thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate you speaking to our group tonight. And I'm going to invite people to put comments that they might have or questions they might have in the chat. And while you are doing that, I'm going to ask you a quick question. You had mentioned a couple of coping strategies, meditation, exercise, and then you said, all those things, but I don't know if we necessarily do know all those things. So could you maybe list off some things that those of us who are struggling right now through this might try doing that might be helpful to us?
Sure. So a couple things. I would say taking walks is a very good one for those who can and are able to. Getting back into old hobbies that you may have had in the past, but you were too busy to engage in. So one of my hobbies was writing short stories and poetry and things like that. And I've, had the time to get back into that. And that was really nice. So finding old hobbies, drawing or whatever, making crafts, things that you used to do that maybe you didn't have time as you got older and became into adulthood. This is a time to kind of become a child again in a way, to use that imagination and be creative. So creative tasks like that would be very nice. Meditation, or, that has a connotation, but I'll say meditation or reflection. So sitting quietly alone, just kind of taking things in, being mindful of your surroundings. That always brings down the blood pressure, brings down the heart rate, helps people cope. Being in the moment, so living in the moment, trying to live in the moment, that's a hard thing to do, but to try to really when you're meditating or relaxing or reflecting, to kind of just slowly ease yourself into it so that you're in that specific spot and nowhere else. And that's basically anyone who's going to try this will sit down, close their eyes for a few minutes, and they have a rush of thoughts in their heads and they can't really get them out. Well, the best way to do it is to let the rush of thoughts continue until they dry up. So have the rush of thoughts, just don't actively engage in them. So, you close your eyes and then you get the rush of thoughts, and the rush of thoughts is there. And if you don't engage them, they eventually start leaving your mind. And as you practice this day to day, eventually you'll get to a place where you could clear your mind and really relax during those moments. I think that's a very important thing. Cooking is another thing that people enjoy with all the restaurants closed and all that thing. I know they're going to be reopening at 50% capacity in a couple of days, but cooking is another thing to dabble in and try new recipes, try to cook, and refine those skills. That could be relaxing. I found that to be relaxing and fun. And spending, if you live in a house with family, oftentimes we live with family members that we don't really know because we're always out and about. So yeah, we have family that we live with, but they're like roommates almost. So this is a time to really be a family again. If you have family that's living with you, to really reconnect as a family and get to know one another as a family, or reignite that family bond that you have. So those are just a couple of things that come to mind. There's plenty, sure everyone will have their own list of what interests them, but basically do things that interest you or used to interest you that you didn't have time for.
Thank you for that. We did get some comments in the chat, so I'm going to sort of read some of them out. And there's a couple that are questions, and maybe we can encourage some people to contribute too if they want to verbally about ideas they have. So one thing that was mentioned is, just like Andy said, another way to cope is to do something for others. And I think that tends to help you get you out of your own head, and can really helpful to increase your positive mood if you're doing that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then we have, let's see, walking is great, writing to relatives, note postcards, leftover greeting cards. If a person in recovery does relapse during this isolation period, how would you suggest they try to get back on the right road?
Well, sorry, if a person relapses in this period?
Yes.
To contact their provider, and if the provider is not answering, to contact someone who's open and providing the medication-assisted treatment or therapy or whatever the service that they need. So go through your physician. If you don't have one, find one. And if you can't find one, reach out and we could get you one.
So people could reach out basically to us, to our organization, and we'll help connect you to the resources that can get you help. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see, meditation and reflection are great. Reconnecting like Andy did. There are certain foods that help with depression. Are you familiar with them?
I generally say that healthy eating will keep you physically and emotionally healthy. What's healthy eating? A balanced diet, not too much processed foods, not too much dairy. Make sure you're getting enough vitamins and minerals in your food. Things like, dark chocolate and coffee can help with depression and help raise a little bit of serotonin. But this is not a long-term treatment. It's not like you take a chocolate bar a day and you keep the sertraline away. No, you need to take your sertraline if you're on that, or Zoloft and the chocolate and a little piece of chocolate. But it's not. I don't think there's anything that necessarily replaces having a good support system, whether that be therapy or friends or family or people that you trust or support groups. And if you need it, medications. But the eating healthy is the first step in that, and it's probably one of the base of our health is what we eat. So if the base is good, everything else will fit into place. So you have to have a good foundation, if you will, and that's where the healthy food and healthy habits, healthy sleeping, all those things play a big role. And
exercise, right? It's pretty important.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So other comments, mantras help me. Sometimes when my panic disorder sets in, I go right to breathing and mantras. My fave is all is well, all will be well. So.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. It's my understanding that the federal government has reduced funding for mental health and addiction support. This is very disheartening and is so critically needed. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
They're always playing things. You know, Michigan is a little funny. Mental health is done through certain community mental health things, but we take Medicaid at the clinic, but obviously because mental health is also done in public service sectors and things like that, the funding is always a little limited because it's being split amongst so many people. But I don't know. I'm not too familiar if they're cutting. They're always cutting something in mental health. So.
Are there any strategies that are helpful with intense physical anxiety symptoms that you would recommend that people try?
So it depends on how intense. If they're intense, you're getting 2 or 3 panic attacks a day, you need to see somebody. That's where it becomes, it's crippling your life. If intense, you mean like you're just constantly on edge, that's where the meditation, that's where picking up the old hobbies comes in. That's where doing arts and crafts, keeping yourself relaxed and occupied. Not occupied as in like jittery occupied where you got to do like now you know, I said do arts and crafts and all of a sudden you buy 15 things of arts and crafts, you got to do them all that night. That's also part of anxiety. Anxiety is to take one project and to just kind of slowly work on it, to train your brain to start going a little bit slower. Things like that, talking, communicating, socializing. So it depends on how severe. If it's severe enough where it's really crippling your life, then you should probably get some professional help.
Yeah. So Barb comments that encouraging those in recovery in any of the numerous Facebook groups, sort of to connect with them for purposes of connection, which makes sense. There's a lot of groups out there focused on recovery that offer support. Facebook.
You want to make sure that if you are in a group, that it's not like pseudoscience groups where they're telling you, you know, you don't need to see your psychiatrist. Psychiatrists are the devil, stuff like that, right? Because that's just not true. I'm not the devil. But you want to be careful. But yes, I think Facebook's groups, FAN, I think is an amazing example of that. These are things that are backed up by people with a good head on their shoulders. So I think those are very healthy. But you want to get away from some of the other stuff that's like anti everything except their way or the highway.
Yep. Lisa has mentioned a couple of, she'd mentioned mantras earlier, and she's just kind of putting in the chat a couple of things that she does that's helpful to her. Like one of the things that she'll sort of repeat to herself is gentle, gentle, because it reminds her to be gentle with herself and to take things gently. So
mantras are a good way to start meditating or start mindfulness. It's a good way to, when you repeat it, you're clearing your mind and focusing just on the mantra. Eventually, especially if you're new to it, as you get more and more into meditation or mindfulness or what have you, you'll eventually be able to clear out your mind simply by closing your eyes and waiting a few minutes. But in the beginning, absolutely, I think mantras have a very, very good role to play.
Yeah. So there's a question that is a little bit topic, but in terms of the anxiety caused by the coronavirus epidemic, but I'll ask it to you anyway. Can a person continue MAT for 4 or 5, 6 years straight? What happens as a result of that time on Suboxone or other medications to assist urges, cravings?
You can continue it for that long. It's better. I mean, it's always better to get off of it after a few years. If you need help to get off of your MAT, please contact FAN and they'll refer you somewhere that can help you with that. But being on it for a few years it's not damaging. You know, it does have a plateau effect, so it's not like being on heroin for 4, 5, 6 years. So basically, the rule with medication-assisted treatment is to keep the person on it as long as they need it. And that depends. That's different from person to person. The old model and the model that many rehabs use is we use it just to detox and then we send you off and you better be good, right? And that's more of a model that I hope is dying out because that model comes with a lot of relapse. So we really want to use medication-assisted treatment for as long as the person needs it.
Right. Barb also comments that hosting and or attending Zoom recovery meetings can help with the depression and get you sort of out of your own head. I know that Barb I see posts from Barb on Facebook and many different recovery groups with all these meetings that she's saying times and places and or time and when it's going to happen. And so I think we all really appreciate that she does that. And then we have a comment from Aileen Vazquez pointing out that there are many service providers that are still providing services. So for example, Home Movement Division in Ann Arbor, they're running virtually with all services, including case management, peer recovery coach services, therapy, and psychiatry. So there are, it's not as though everything's closed down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That takes care of the questions on the chat. Does anybody have any additional questions that they would like to ask of either Andy or Dr. Chevette?
I have a question for Dr. Chevette, if I'm saying it right.
Yes.
I had asked the question, when you were explaining the stages of becoming an addict or of being an addict, were you the one that did that, or was that Andy?
No, I did that. I did
and you
that.
were talking about obsession and about being obsessive compulsive, and when you get to that stage that you're definitely at a bad place in terms of addiction. I was wondering if, I mean, how does a person recognize that in their own addict child?
I think you would recognize it as, so I explained that it starts off as excitement. So you can't wait to do the thing. And when you do it, you get a release of like that energy, and it just feels so like, oh, thank God I did that, right? Like, oh my God, it feels amazing. And then it gets to the point where you're anxious and agitated all day until you do that thing. That's the warning sign. So is this person someone who's agitated all day, or is this person pretty normal all day and then they still go do the drug, right? They're itching to do it, but they're not really agitated and angry or anxious all the time. Once that crosses over to anxiety, that's where you know that it's starting to get more serious.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So there's another comment from Mike Johnson. Thank you for taking time today. I appreciate it. I have severe anxiety and this meeting helped. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. We have a little bit more time, so I'm just going to throw out a little comment myself here. Comment/question. I'm not really sure if it's a question. Maybe more of an observation and you could comment on it. I know part of what has been really stressful for me, and I suspect that maybe this is true of many people, but it comes in different forms, is the sudden lockdown and the protections we had to engage in because of the coronavirus pandemic. It just changed everything in our world. And there's a certain comfort that maybe we don't even recognize as comfort that we get through with the routine of our life. And suddenly, all the routine is gone and everything's turned upside down, and everything that we're doing is new in one form or another. And that's fine for a day or two, but when it's like sustained this newness of our world and trying to figure out how to operate and navigate where everything's new every day, it's exhausting. And it definitely wears on you. So
there's a fascinating book by Alvin Toffler. It's called Future Shock. I recommend anyone who likes to read to get this book and read it. It's called Future Shock, and in it he says that the illiterate of the 21st century. So he wrote this in the 1970s, and he said that the future is going to come at us and it's going to be similar to how when we go to a country and we get culture shock, we're going to have a future shock. Except with future shock, there's no way to return back to our comfort because it's everywhere. While when you have culture shock, you always return back to your country and you feel like, okay, well, I always have somewhere to go back to. And the illiterate person in the 21st century is going to be the person who's unable to learn, unlearn, and relearn, because that's really going to be what the world's going to be like, where we're going to have to constantly be learning and unlearning things until we get things correctly. And I think we're there. I think we're in a place where the future's starting to be a little shocking and moving a little faster than it was over the last 20 years. Like all of a sudden decades are happening within a couple of years. And so this time is a time for us to be comfortable with being able to learn and unlearn things. Even whole systems and whole medical practices and whole industries are going to be shifting a lot. And that's not to cause people anxiety. That's to give you guys a bit of hope and a little bit of assurance that is going to happen. We're going to just have to be able to adapt and move with what's coming.
All right, thank you very much for those comments. One more time, does anybody have any other questions or comments that they'd like to contribute to this conversation? All right, then I'd like to thank both Andy and Dr. Shebeck so much for joining us and sharing your experience, your comments, your wisdom and knowledge with us in this topic. So our next meeting will be in July, the first Monday in July. Now, whether we'll be on Zoom or whether we'll be live, I don't know. I'm actually hopeful based on what's happened today that maybe we'll be live. But obviously we'll have to, you know, make some changes in how we typically organize our room and all of that. We'll have to figure that out. But stay tuned. I can tell you again that the event will be posted on the Facebook page. So if you go tune into our Facebook page, and we'll also post something on our web page on the fan site. So you know, if you want to keep in touch, and we also, by the way, if we have your email addresses, we send an email every month. So we'll let you know what we're doing in terms of our meetings for July. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great evening, and hopefully we'll see you in July. Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.